You know, of all the things I enjoy in life, I think wandering these lakeland fells probably gives me more pleasure than anything else. Well, almost anything. But I've been a lakeland devotee now for something like 25 to 30 years, and I've been lucky enough to make my home in the area. And yet, no matter how many times I come up on the tops, it never fails to give me a thrill when I come upon a viewpoint like this and gaze at the scene beyond. This is the side of Maiden Moor above Derwent Water. And just standing here, you're filled with an almost irresistible urge to take off like a bird, to soar across the lake and the fells and the distant peaks. I think most hill walkers have experienced that sensation from time to time. William Wordsworth certainly did. He asked his readers to imagine they were sitting on a cloud, suspended between Scafell Pike and Great Gable, looking down on the valley below. But Wordsworth could only do it in his head. Now you have the opportunity through modern technology to turn Wordsworth's dream into a reality as we transport you to that magical place adjacent to the highest point in England, and I hand you over to my colleague who will be your guide on the helicopter for a bird's eye view of the Lake District.
So here we are, on William Wordsworth's famous cloud, looking across from the slopes of Great Gable towards the Scafell Range and the great gash of Piers Gill down the side of Ling Mel. Here it is in close-up, an awesome chasm close to the highest land in England, and facing one of the most famous views in England. Great Gable. Not the highest, but certainly Lakeland's most majestic peak, the chosen symbol of the Lake District National Park. Beyond it, Kirk Fell, and the ridge above Ennerdale leading to Pillar, Steeple, and Haycock. And far to the west now, Ewbarrow, Wastwater, Black Combe, and the Irish Sea. It's a noble mountain from any viewpoint, and we'll use it now as the starting point for our first run down one of the valleys that Wordsworth likened to the spokes of a wheel fanning out from this central hub. We're heading for Styhead Tarn and Borrowdale. Green Gable, and over the hill that fine striding high-level walk over Brandreth to Honister Summit. At the bottom of Sowermill Gill there is Seathwaite, officially the wettest place in England, but not today. And on now into Borrowdale, virtually surrounded by the high hills and always a favourite spot for walkers, climbers and touring motorists. Castle Crag, the main tooth in the famous jaws of Borrowdale, where the road squeezes between the River Derwent and the steep fellside, is an easy walk with a staggering view from the summit. These paths high above Grange village lead eventually in their meandering way to the much-visited hamlet of Wat Endleth. And there, framed by cat bells, Skiddaw and the well-situated Borrowdale Hotel, is the Queen of the Lakes, Derwentwater. And here's the gorge where the famous waterfalls go rushing and flushing and brushing and gushing, as the poet said, almost into the swimming pool of the Lodore Hotel. Out on the water, an incredible atmosphere of tranquility reminds us that St. Herbert, 13 centuries ago, lived out a hermit's life on his island, gazing at this selfsame skyline of Cat Bells, Maiden Moor, Causey Pike, Robinson, and the rest. And wherever you are on Derwentwater, there's always the towering heights of Skiddaw. Is it any wonder that when the National Trust was founded in 1900, among its first acquisitions was land around the shores of this beautiful lake? To the northwest of Derwentwater is the broad valley leading to Penrith, with Blencathra, better known to some as Saddleback, dominating the A66 trunk road. But this road leads away from the mountains, so we're heading south now to another lake and another valley. These fell tops could be almost anywhere in Cumbria, but there are clues. That long straight line on the horizon has got to be the High Street Ridge, where the Roman legions marched 2,000 years ago. That building down there is the curious Lyulph's Tower, and here, sure enough, is Ullswater, snaking along its valley looking more like a river than a lake. The lakeside path from Salwick to Patterdale is a favourite walk which many people combine with a cruise on one of the lake steamers. Here, behind Birk Fell, several popular routes to the summit of Place Fell. Over High Dodd and the little valley of Boredale, and we have just one more ridge to cross before reaching our next destination. Here, on the heights of Beder Fell, the lucky and silent walker can often catch a glimpse of some of the 500 or so wild red deer who for centuries have made their home in these parts. This is the Howgrain Valley in Martindale, high above Ullswater and hidden from sight by the bulk of Hallin Fell there at the mouth of the valley. Apart from the ancient chapel of St. Martin with a 500-year-old yew tree in its grounds, Martindale has no obvious tourist attractions. What it does have is the utter peace of an unfrequented place, where life on the hill farm is much the same as it's always been, hard, lonely, but ultimately satisfying. It takes a fair amount of motoring skill to negotiate the steep, twisting road into Martindale from Howtown down by the lake shore. There's a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit on Ullswater now, so the most familiar sight on its surface, apart from the steamers, is the most pleasing: the sailing boat. And here they lie at anchor in Sharrow Bay, alongside the famous Country House Hotel. And further along the shoreline, just as Wordsworth discovered them nearly 200 years ago, are the simple yellow flowers that inspired one of the best-known poems in the English language. The Kirkstone Pass is the direct route between Ullswater and Windermere, but since we don't have to stick to the road, we'll take a short diversion to look at some of the less familiar crags surrounding Lakeland's most popular mountain, Helvellyn. This is Coffer Pike and the awesome crags below Fairfield Summit. Behind St Sunday Crag there is Ullswater. And there's the whole of Striding Edge, silhouetted against a sunlit Catsley Camp. And above Grisdale, the price of popularity, the eroded path back to Helvellyn Summit. Down to the road again now, leading to the Troutbeck village where John Peel didn't live, and on to Windermere. It's the biggest lake, and without doubt it's the one which plays host to the widest variety of waterborne activities. It's the playground of the lakes, with speedboats, sailing boats, water skiing, scuba diving, grand hotels, holiday flats, time-sharing schemes, almost, you might say, all the trappings of the seaside, but set against the breathtaking beauty of the nearby mountains. There's even a specialist centre here at Lowood, where the novice can learn to water ski and dive. To Rydalwater and Grasmere come the modern-day pilgrims to worship at the shrine of the man who, more than anyone else, inspired the movement to preserve and treasure this beautiful corner of England, William Wordsworth. That familiar skyline of Pike of Briscoe, Crinkle Crags, the Band and Bowfell tells us that we must be in Langdale and heading for the Langdale Pikes, those unmistakable fingers of rock pointing to the sky and visible from almost every standpoint in the Lake District, and which over the years have given so many people their first panoramic look at the Lakeland peaks. back on Wordsworth's Cloud again, over the roof of the Lake District. The Mosedale Horseshoe is a favourite ridge walk with an almost infinite variety of views. There's Ennerdale from Wind Gap between Pillar and Steeple. Down here at modest little Loweswater, the land is green and lush, completely unspoiled. In the well-loved neighbouring valley of Crummockwater and Buttermere too, the scene is idyllic. But you'll have noticed on the heights the ugly sight of path erosion. Back on the ground, Bob Langley has news of what's being done about it.
I'm near the top of Green's Gill, about 1,800 feet above sea level, on the popular path from Butterdale to Sprinkling Tarn and the higher peaks beyond. It's very obvious why these routes are so conspicuous from the air. Thousands of feet trampling up them loosen the soil and the stones, which are then washed away by the mountain rain and turned into new tributaries of the main streams. I've come to chat to some of the people who are working steadily to bring a halt to this galloping erosion, which is producing such unsightly scars on what is, after all, a very special landscape. Green's Gill, like a third of the Lake District National Park, is owned and in the care of the National Trust. And they've launched a special appeal to raise money to pay for work groups, such as the one run by Ray McAfee, who are reconstructing the eroded pathways. Give me some idea of what you're trying to achieve here.
Well, we're trying to stop the erosion. We're not really trying to make the paths easier for people to walk up, but with people walking up it, they've worn the grass off, then the rain washes the soil away, the stones come to the top, and eventually you get a deep root in it. And people kick the stones and it just gets worse and worse. So we're cobbling it, well, pitching it, so as it'll never wear out again.
And where are the cobbles coming from?
Well, we just collect them off the hillside. Sometimes we have to carry them 30 or 40 yards. And the giant hedging stones we bring down off the hillside as well.
So it's a pretty heavy job.
Very heavy indeed.
What about the laying?
Well, normally we dig the ground out if possible. We dig it out about a foot deep, and then we lay the stones in, a bit like making a giant jigsaw puzzle. We lay the stones in long ways on, not flat, and leaning down bank, pressing against each other. And then we fill the bottom 3/4 of them with stone, and that also acts as a natural drain, apart from the drains we put across the path.
Now, how do you avoid the paths becoming slippery in wet weather?
Well, really, they're not too bad. Once the soil, we cover them with soil, but once the rain has washed the soil off and people have worn them, they seem to get quite a good grip on them. They don't seem to be too slippery at all. I've never found them so.
Now, how many people are working on this?
There's 4 in my gang. There's 6 altogether. A new gang's just been formed in Langdale by the National Trust, a gang of 2. But 4 in this gang, we've worked on most of the major footpath repairs in the Lake District.
Now, as well as the laying of the path, sometimes you get a spot like here where you have to build up the sides as well.
Yes, well, the water, there was that bigger flow of water coming down. It washed the side of the bank completely away down to the river, which means that we have to start from the riverbed and gradually build the stones one on top of the other, gradually bringing them back till we get to the height the path was at, and then we cobble the final row.
It's clearly a very long, slow job.
It is. It's very difficult. In that sort of work's the most difficult of the lot.
Now, just this one path, the one path we're standing on. Give me an estimate. Put a price tag on it. How much would it cost to get the entire thing finished?
Well, I should think it would cost about £50,000 for a path like this, so because it takes over 2 years. It would take 2 years roughly to do. And I should think it would take about that in wages and various things. The materials we collect off the hillside anyway, so there's no cost for that.
But for this one path, £50,000?
I should think so, yes.
Well, clearly an extremely expensive operation to keep this work going, and the National Trust can use all the contributions it can get. And, you know, for those of us who go in the hills regularly, it does seem a perfect way to say a little thank you for the pleasure the Lake District has given us over the years. Well, up till now, we've been looking at the Lake District we all know and love, in spring, summer, and autumn. But for me, the best time of year is winter, when the snows bring out contours and gullies and ripples that you're not even conscious of in summertime. There's a different feel to the landscape, a different texture, a different perspective. And it's very satisfying to climb up to some spot like the Sphinx Rock on the side of Gable, overlooking the Wasdale Valley. So let's take to the air once again and look down on the highest peaks of England, etched with the snows of winter.
Before we soar again over the high mountains and swoop low over the depths of Wastwater, it's fitting that we leave the last word to William Wordsworth, who, in the best of his poetry, enshrined forever the feelings of those who come here with an eye to perceive and a heart to enjoy. 'Tis the sense of majesty and beauty and repose, a blended holiness of earth and sky, something that makes this individual spot, this small abiding place of many men, a termination and a last retreat, a center come from wheresoe'er you will, a whole without dependence or defect, made for itself and happy in itself, perfect contentment, unity entire.